Massachusetts, the land where pilgrims first arrived, and home to the Wampanoag, or the people of the first light, as well as many others from every nation and tribe. It's been described as a land filled with promise. To understand Massachusetts and its history is to know the beginning of America's maritime prosperity and its foundation, built on the wisdom of its forefathers. As described in the Wampanoag oral histories, the seas and lands around Massachusetts were once filled with plenty. It was said that back in the day, one could simply walk on the backs of codfish in Cape Cod, or gaze into the endless beauty of its forests, rich in color in all seasons. And as close as faith is to a way of life, regardless of belief, this land has always believed strongly in spirit and reason, and in defining one's identity through values and ideals that stand the test of time. And this is the story of everyone born in the land, no matter where they came from. It's a story of the land of the first light. The first peoples have always honored the protection of wisdom through the ages. Be it the respect for nature or the bonds of community and family, these values have always formed the core identity of someone born here in Massachusetts. Against an ever-evolving world where winds bring about change, and when entities or ideas would come or fade away, despite it all, the wisdom of the first peoples has continued and been passed on as knowledge in oral histories, from one generation to the other.
My name is Waban Webquish. I'm from Mashpee, Massachusetts. So we were part of the coastal communities, Eastern Woodland, and seasonally we would live in different areas. In the spring and summer, we would gravitate to the ocean and the lakes and things like that in the water. In the fall, we would be harvesting deer, trapping. We would do a lot of fishing. In the winter, we would be doing ice fishing as well. And as part of the old way of our own conservation, we are stewards of the land. We are still stewards of the land. And we share the land with all our creations, all our relatives, all our ancestors, and everything around us. We coexist with these creatures. You know, we respect things in a different way, and we were always taught that we give back to Mother Earth as well. So we provide an offering of tobacco, or we provide an offering or a prayer or a song when we're engaging in these activities.
So the Quaker Wampanoag, we believe in reciprocity. That's something big across a lot of indigenous cultures to North America. We believe that giving back to the land from what we take. Also, there wasn't a concept of ownership of land, because in our belief, our spirits are the same as the land. When our people pass away, their spirits stay on the land, and they stay with the land, and they tend to it. So it's when you tend to your body and you stay healthy, it's the same thing as tending to the land and making it stay healthy. It's because our bodies are the land, and our land is the body.
With the arrival of immigrants into Massachusetts came a new spirit of enterprise. Helped by skilled Wampanoag whalemen and immigrant labor from across the world, early entrepreneurs in the 17th century recognized the opportunity that the whales around Cape Cod had for whaling oil at a time where modernizing cities needed fuel for light. It was here in Nantucket where the world's first commercial whaling industry was established. But as fuel technology evolved and depleting number of whales forced whaling ships further offshore, the prosperous whaling years in Nantucket soon came to an end. While many of its young left westwards for the California gold rush of that era, Nantucket's heritage survived, with the proud few that stayed on reinventing this place they called home.
When the English settlers come over and their sheep farming economy is having very limited success, they start to pick up this Wampanoag practice of drift whaling, and they're the ones that start to sort of take it more out to sea as sort of an active hunting of whales. And that initially starts just sort of right on Nantucket, right off the coast, and then ultimately leads to sort of this worldwide whaling practice that you see come through later on. And that really is sort of how Nantucket becomes a much more prosperous community, because they now have access to trade around the world. Whaling really does sort of bring in all of the money that led Nantucket to becoming a more prosperous community. So whaling really declines on Nantucket for a number of reasons. There was the Great Fire of 1846, which burned down about a third of Nantucket's downtown. And then there was the California Gold Rush, the discovery of petroleum. Both of those were big hits to whaling everywhere, and the Civil War also. And so with all of those factors combined, whaling ends on Nantucket in the 1860s. And after that, the island really fell into a pretty deep economic depression. It was really difficult for people here to make ends meet without that industry sustaining the community. And so it's not until the 1880s that you start to see Nantucket sort of come back into a community sustained by some sort of trade. And the industry that really sweeps in as that second economy on Nantucket, or major economy on Nantucket, is tourism. And that is the economy that has carried us straight through today. The mission of the Nantucket Historical Association is to preserve, share, and interpret the diverse stories and history of Nantucket Island. There are so many diverse stories about Nantucket, and it's really easy to sort of focus on one or two of them, whether that's sort of, you know, strong women that have come from Nantucket, or the whaling history, or the Quaker history. But there are just so many things to learn, and I just love sort of sharing that with people and being able to expand the idea of what Nantucket has been and is currently.
As its name suggests, Cape Cod was named after the abundance of codfish that the waters around Massachusetts were blessed with. The staple of new immigrants, who worked not only as whalers but also as fishermen, came to cities like Boston from places as far away as Cape Verde, Portugal, and Ireland. This would become another cornerstone in Massachusetts' role as a foundation for the oceanic trade of our modern world.
Back in the late 1700s, when the white settlers came, before that, the Native Americans were the whalers. They did it sustainably here. And then the whalers came in, and What they would do is catch whales here and turn the whale blubber into whale oil. And that whale money built up the village of Edgartown. And before that, we were just farmers and fishermen. And the whalers created this whole new industry. So Edgartown was considered one of the wealthiest towns in America here back in the 1800s. As time went on, whaling ended because oil was discovered in Pennsylvania. And kerosene became a cheaper alternative to that.
New Bedford historically was considered the whaling capital of the world in the early 1800s, mid-1800s. New Bedford and Nantucket were home to very large whaling fleets that whaled locally and around the world, catching primarily sperm whales for whale oil. And the whaling industry peaked around the mid-1800s, and the last whaling boat left New Bedford, I believe, in 1874. So being a large working harbor from the whaling industry, then over the years, New Bedford became a larger fishing port. So a lot of folks came to the area from Portugal, from the Azores, an island of Portugal, as well as the Cape Verdean Islands to fish. They needed a lot of labor. So a lot of workers came, worked their way up. Being where we're located, we're very close to great fishing areas of George's Banks and the Grand Banks, which are some of the richest fishing grounds in the world. So a lot of fishermen were based here in New Bedford, fishing for codfish and scallops and clams. And then over the years, it just continued to develop. It probably peaked somewhere in the 1970s, I believe, where it really became really big industry. And then unfortunately, as more fishing was done, the fisheries got depleted. And then the government has put a lot more regulations in place to try to maintain the fisheries while also maintaining the commercial viability for the fishermen as well too. So it's a real balance between maintaining the fisheries and maintaining the economy that the fishermen generate. The Portuguese immigrants, for example, are a huge factor in shaping the local culture. There are Portuguese restaurants all over the place. There's many Portuguese families that have been here for generations. So it absolutely has been a major Portuguese influence. And now we're seeing that with the South American immigrants as well too, as they're here for multiple generations and things. So you can really see it's really a very diverse area in New Bedford.
We have fish and quahogs and clams and scallops, oysters. So the environment was very rich that way. It was the fishing industry and the farming and of course the migration of a lot of Europeans to these areas because of the richness of what the environment provided. I grew up here, was raised here. I left for 40 years. What drew me back is the community. Somebody in the community is ill. There's fundraisers. It's more community here than any place I've ever been. We look out for each other. We have to work hard in the summertime, people do, to make their living, and then we kick back a bit here in the wintertime. It's very community oriented.
I would say my hope, I think New Bedford is doing great. The downtown area here is doing great. There's a lot of great restaurants. There's now the train that comes down from Boston, so hopefully people will continue to want to live here. The diversification of the waterfront between the seafood industry and the offshore wind industry. So my hope is that New Bedford and the surrounding areas continue to thrive and do well.
So we have a few traditional celebrations. We have powwow, of course, which is in September. And that is just a gathering of people where we dance to our traditional music and we put on our regalia. There's also a holiday called Cranberry Day, and that's really special to us because that is another time that we get together and celebrate, and we have a sunrise ceremony. And it's kind of the whole day out just picking cranberries in a bog. I believe it's important because that's what we've traditionally done. That is our practice of our community, and to have those sacred times together where we're just together. And without that, I don't believe a community can be as strong as it is. And without these celebrations and without these gatherings, we're not who we are as a people.
In the near future, I just hope that these communities understand that we're still here. We're Indigenous people of Turtle Island, to respect our ways, to respect our culture, and you know, we're here for the long haul. We're not going anywhere.
Let it go. Everything you left unspoken. Let me know the secrets of our heart wide open. I will never leave your side. I will hold you closer in your comfort. Take the world off both our shoulders. I will hold you closer, hold you closer. I will hold you closer, hold you closer. Indigo, side of you that you're not showing, ever glow. There's a beauty in all that's broken. I will never leave your side. Hold you closer, be your comfort. Take the world off both your shoulders. I will hold you closer, hold you closer. I will hold you closer, hold you closer.
The Wampanoag of Massachusetts were generous to the Pilgrims and gave only from the goodness of their hearts and from the plenty of the ocean, in the hope that we too would become respectful caretakers of these blessings. In this lifetime, and in the lifetimes of the generations after us, let us always have our hearts filled not only with joy, but also with grace and thankfulness for this place that we call home. This land, the land of the first light.